Scarlet Vendimion was known throughout the kingdom as a beautiful and refined noblewoman, elegant in manner, flawless in appearance, and destined to become a queen. Since childhood, she had been engaged to Prince Kyle, the second prince of the realm, and everyone believed their union would bring honor to both houses. Yet behind her calm smile was a young woman who had been forced to endure years of humiliation and cruelty. She obeyed, smiled, and played the role expected of her. But one day in the grand hall before the entire court, everything changed. The prince who had been her fiancé for 17 years shattered their engagement and replaced her with another woman, and that moment changed everything. The story begins in the grand hall, where every gaze was fixed on one young woman, Scarlet Vendimion. With calm composure, she looked at Prince Kyle and asked him to repeat what he had just said. The prince, standing tall with a confident smirk, said that he would gladly repeat it as many times as she wished. Then, before the entire court, he declared that their engagement was officially over and that from that day forward, his fiancée would be none other than Terranezza. Instantly, the hall erupted in applause. The nobles clapped and cheered, calling the new couple beautiful and wishing them happiness. Terranezza curtsied gracefully, announcing that she was now the prince's fiancée and would dedicate her life to his joy. Kyle praised her kindness, claiming she was gentle and pure, the complete opposite of Scarlet, whom he now mocked as cold-hearted and unworthy. He said he regretted wasting 17 years bound to someone he called a disgrace, a mad woman who had ruined his life. Scarlet, however, stayed composed. She reminded him that their engagement had been arranged between the royal family and her house, Vamion, long before either of them was even born, and she asked if he really believed he could end it on a whim. Kyle simply smiled and replied that he could. He claimed that Terranezza had told him the truth, that Scarlet had bullied her at the academy out of jealousy and cruelty. Scarlet blinked in disbelief and calmly answered that she did not recall any such incidents and, in fact, had never even met Terranezza before that day. Kyle took her denial as arrogance. His voice rose, filled with anger, as he accused her of tearing Terranezza's notebook in class, locking her in a bathroom, spreading rumors, and even pushing her down the stairs. The court gasped. Scarlet could feel every stare burn into her. After a pause, she simply nodded and said that if this was how he saw things, then she accepted his decision to end the engagement. Kyle sneered, saying that she was only pretending to stay calm, that she was broken inside, and that the role of villainess suited her perfectly. Scarlet looked down for a moment, then lifted her eyes, steady and clear. She said that if everyone wished to see her as a villain, then she had no reason to restrain herself any longer. Still, she asked for one last request before leaving. Kyle scoffed, demanding how she dared to ask for anything more. But Terranezza, acting the part of a saint, gently said that it would not hurt to grant a final wish. Amused, Kyle agreed, saying that Scarlet could have anything she wanted, gold, jewels, a farewell gift. But Scarlet refused them all. Her final wish, she said, was to strike the witch who had taken everything from her. Before anyone could stop her, she acted. Scarlet's fist connected with Terranezza's face, and the hall froze as Terranezza collapsed, blood trickling from her lip. In that instant, Scarlet herself was shocked. She did not understand why she had lost control so suddenly, why she was so furious. Of course, she was angry at the lies and humiliation, but as she stood there trembling, she realized it was something deeper. Her mind flashed back to her childhood, to her brother Leo scolding her after yet another fight. He had reminded her that it had only been a week since she beat up a boy from House Alexia, and now she had struck another. Even though he knew she had been defending a commoner, he told her that her debut ball was approaching, and she needed to control her temper. Scarlet had insisted she had acted with reason. But Leo had looked at her almost sadly and said that when he arrived, she had looked pleased, her hands bloody, her eyes bright. It made her wonder even then if somewhere inside she had enjoyed it. Not long after, the night of her debut ball arrived. Scarlet sat alone, isolated from the crowd, when a young man approached her. He introduced himself as Prince Kyle, the second prince of the realm, and told her that she did not need such formality because from that day on, she would belong to him. That was how their long, miserable engagement began. From that day forward, Scarlet's life became one of endurance. Kyle took pleasure in humiliating her in public and mocking her every move. When she went to her father, begging for the engagement to be cancelled, her father only apologized and said that the royal family's will could not be denied. So Scarlet endured until she entered the Royal Academy at 15. There her talents shone, her beauty, intellect, and elegance made her admired by all. She ranked first in every exam. But then Kyle appeared again, mocking her and saying her father only sent her there to serve him. It was then she decided to grow stronger, to build steel within her heart. One day, as she was about to join her friends for lunch, Kyle appeared again, furious that she was not attending to him. He grabbed her by the shirt in front of everyone. Scarlet tried to explain, but he accused her of disrespect. When she apologized, he mocked her sincerity and dragged her away to punish her. Outside, he pulled out a dagger, threatening to cut her silver hair, her family's pride. Scarlet warned him that her father would hear of this and that he would be punished. But Kyle only laughed, saying that her father would never defy his father and that her engagement would last only as long as he allowed it. Scarlet clenched her fists, ready to fight. But before things went further, a calm yet firm voice interrupted them, telling them to take their fight somewhere else. A young man dropped down from a tree, Prince Julius, Kyle's older brother, and the first prince. He scolded Kyle, saying that his behavior explained why he was stuck in the lower curriculum. Kyle was furious, but Julius stood his ground, apologizing to Scarlet for his brother's cruelty and warning Kyle that if he continued, he would intervene personally. When Kyle tried to order his attendant to remove Julius, the man refused, unable to act against the first prince. Kyle stormed off, humiliated. Afterward, Scarlet thanked Julius. He told her that he was not sure whether he had saved her or Kyle, because she had clearly been ready to strike. Then Scarlet asked Julius why he was reading up in a tree instead of inside like everyone else. Julius just smiled and said he preferred being alone, away from all the noise and distractions of court life. Now the kingdom of Palicin had two princes, Julius, the first and rightful heir, calm, brilliant, and admired by many, yet quietly resented by nobles who thought his influence held them back. And then there was Kyle, the second prince, supported by a rival faction hungry for more power. Students often clashed between the two sides, though Scarlet, being ever composed, stayed out of those petty rivalries. But soon things between Scarlet and Julius began to change. Julius told her that he didn't mind spending more time in class anymore because he had found something interesting. That something, he said, was Scarlet herself. He told her she was more captivating than any book he had ever read. Scarlet found that irritating, thinking he was just another troublemaker trying to get on her nerves. Then came the results of the next examination, and this time Julius had taken first place, pushing Scarlet to second. The students were shocked. Scarlet had always been number one. Curious, she noticed Julius had perfect scores in both magic and swordsmanship, the kind of marks she herself had never been given. When she congratulated him, Julius replied with effortless confidence, saying first place hadn't been that hard to get. That stung, so Scarlet decided to take it as a challenge. She trained harder than ever, and during the next exam, she reclaimed her top spot. Julius congratulated her warmly, even resting a hand on her head, saying he'd enjoyed watching her work so hard. Her friends teased her, wondering if Julius had let her win just to see her reaction. Scarlet dismissed the thought, determined not to be affected by him again. But soon Julius kept showing up, greeting her in the halls, appearing in the library, always somehow crossing paths. Scarlet began to wonder if he was doing it on purpose, though he insisted it was just coincidence. He said he enjoyed seeing the way her emotions played across her face, claiming she was terrible at hiding what she felt. Scarlet scolded him for being rude. Still, Julius didn't stop. He complimented her silver hair, saying it was too beautiful for anyone to harm. Then, with that same calm tone, he said she was unlike anyone he'd ever met, and even pulled out a book with her likeness sketched inside, saying she was one of the most interesting figures his brother had ever told him about. Finally, he went as far as offering to replace Kyle as her fiancé, promising to treat her better. Scarlet politely declined, but deep down, her frustration toward both princes was beginning to grow. Then time moved forward, and we returned to the grand hall, the present moment. Scarlet stands tall, thanking Tereneza for giving her the final reason she needed, and then without hesitation she strikes. Tereneza collapses, blood spilling from her lips. Prince Kyle rushes to her side in shock, shouting at Scarlet, demanding to know what she's done. Scarlet simply answers that she lost control, that she hit Tereneza because she was angry. Is that a problem? She asks coldly, stepping forward as the nobles watch in stunned horror. Inside, she reminds herself of the years she endured, the humiliation, the gossip, the cruelty, all because of her engagement to Kyle. But now, finally, she's free to act. A nobleman calls her insane and orders the guards to seize her. Yet before they can even move, Scarlet casts a sleeping spell, and they all collapse instantly. Panic spreads through the hall. Another noble shouts an offer, his daughter's hand in marriage to whoever can subdue her. Scarlet knocks him down without hesitation. Someone else begs for mercy, but she strikes him too. As she looks around at the terrified crowd, she realizes these nobles have lived their whole lives in corruption and greed. Seeing their downfall fills her with grim satisfaction. Then with a sharp grin, she channels her magic, increases her speed, and declares that they should dance. What follows is chaos, a storm of motion and power. Scarlet punches through every noble who dares to move against her. Some whisper old rumors about a mad dog noblewoman, and Scarlet realizes with bitter amusement that those tales might well have been about her. Still, she doesn't stop. When the hall finally falls silent, littered with the fallen, Scarlet straightens herself and murmurs that it's a fine evening. Turning to Prince Kyle, she smiles coldly and proposes one last dance. asking if he'll lead this time. Kyle can't move. He's frozen with fear. Scarlet raises her fist, but before she can strike, her brother Leo bursts in, shouting for her to stop. And then, before he can reach her, Scarlet's fist flies. She punches Kyle straight across the hall, sending him crashing into the wall. The noise echoes through the stunned silence. In that moment, the nobles, once full of mockery and applause, see their arrogance crumble before them. The engagement is broken, and Scarlet, once the gentle, obedient fiancée, now stands in the wreckage, unbound, furious, and completely free. That night, the grand hall stood in ruins. Shattered glass glittered on the floor, and broken furniture lay everywhere. In the middle of it all stood Scarlet, calm, breathing hard yet feeling lighter than she had in years. For once, the weight of humiliation and restraint she carried for so long was gone. Then Leo rushed in, panic flashing in his eyes as he looked around at the wreckage and the fallen nobles. Scarlet felt a sting of irritation. She had hoped he would trust her judgment, not look at her with fear. A moment later, Prince Julius entered, composed even amid the devastation. He looked around with quiet amusement and asked what could have caused such ruthless destruction. His tone was calm, almost teasing. Scarlet faced them both and said the nobles had committed acts too vile to speak of. When she confronted them, they mocked her, so she acted. Her voice was steady, though anger still burned beneath it. For a moment, no one spoke. Leo stood frozen in disbelief. Then Julius gave a small chuckle, saying he had long wondered when she would stop holding back. Her fury, he said, must have been quite a sight. Scarlet only replied that she had no choice. Leo worried about the family's reputation, but before he could say more, Scarlet's strength failed her. She stumbled and collapsed. Days passed, then one morning, Scarlet awoke to the distant sound of church bells, the bells of the Church of Criminal, the god of time. The moment she opened her eyes, she realized she had overused her divine blessing. But before she could even sit up, she saw a maid on top of her, holding a knife ready to strike. Instinct took over. Scarlet reacted instantly, disarming the maid and sending her stumbling backward. Moments later, Leo burst in, his face filled with alarm. He looked from Scarlet to the maid on the floor and asked if she was hurt. Scarlet regained her calm and simply greeted him with a quiet, "Good morning." Leo ran a hand through his hair in disbelief, muttering that after 3 days of unconsciousness, this was how she woke up. He explained that the doctors had been baffled by her collapse and that he feared she might never open her eyes again. His voice trembled between relief and frustration as he called her reckless. Scarlet bowed her head and apologized sincerely. Leo sighed and forgave her, but made her promise never to hit anyone again. She refused, shaking her head without hesitation. Just then, Prince Julius entered, calm as ever, and remarked that their sleeping beauty had finally awakened. Later that morning, during breakfast, Julius delivered important news. Scarlet's engagement had been officially annulled with her father's consent. She accepted it without emotion. And Julius continued, Prince Kyle had been disinherited for the chaos he caused, and the crown had finally exposed his faction's illegal slave trading. It was a huge scandal, but it also gave the royal family a chance to purge years of corruption. Scarlet quietly asked if she would be punished for her outbursts at the party, but Julius reassured her she wouldn't. In fact, the royal family now considered her indispensable, though for the time being she might remain unmarried. Then, with a hint of amusement, Julius said she had gained something far more valuable. Curious, Scarlet asked what he meant. Julius smiled slightly and explained that her actions had become the talk of the capital. Everyone was now whispering about the woman who single-handedly struck down a hall full of corrupt nobles, the bloodstained lady. Leo sighed, pointing out that just when people had begun to forget her old nickname, the Mad Dog Noblewoman, a new legend was born. Julius chuckled at the irony but soon turned serious again. He explained that many of the nobles Scarlet had exposed were high-ranking officials and replacing them would take time. The biggest issue now was the Prime Minister, Godwin, the man behind Prince Kyle's entire faction. Leo added that the king and Julius had long suspected someone was manipulating the court from behind the scenes, so they'd secretly planned to expose all corrupt nobles at once. That was why they created the Crown Investigatory Office, with Leo as its head. Scarlet glanced at her brother, realizing this must be the reason he looked so tired lately. Julius teased her that much of his workload came from cleaning up the chaos she caused. Leo only smiled weakly and admitted it was partly true. Then Julius introduced someone new, Sigurd, the agent who had infiltrated Prince Kyle's circle and exposed the Prime Minister's network. When Sigurd entered, Scarlet recognized him immediately. He bowed and apologized for deceiving her in the past. Scarlet listened calmly and said she held no grudge. His loyalty to his prince, she said, had always been clear. Still, she admitted his acting had been quite convincing. Sigurd bowed again, asking for her forgiveness. Julius, amused, told Scarlet that if she still felt angry, she could punish him however she wished. Leo tensed at that. but Scarlet's eyes glinted with mischief. She asked if she could strike him. Sigurd nodded, accepting whatever she chose. Scarlet raised her fist, then stopped just short, grazing him lightly before stepping back. She told him their past was settled, reminding him that he once protected her at the academy. Sigurd humbly replied that he was only fulfilling his duty as a knight, but Scarlet silenced him with a sharp look. Julius and Leo could barely hide their smiles at the exchange. After finishing her tea, Scarlet quietly excused herself, but her thoughts were already racing. She knew her academy friends must have heard about the incident and would be worried. Still, another matter weighed heavier on her mind: the maid who had attacked her. When she went to the room where the maid had been detained, it was empty except for a torn dress. Before she could react, a wild beast leaped from the shadows, snarling. Scarlet dodged easily and knocked it down. Her voice turned cold as she ordered it to behave. Calling it by name, the Beast King Manaka, she told it to take human form if it wanted to speak. The creature transformed into a boy with a dagger, declaring he was there to kill her. Scarlet noticed the slave crest carved into his skin and quickly understood. She had offered him a deal. If she freed him, he had to tell her who sent him. Manaka hesitated but agreed. Scarlet invoked her divine blessing, reversing the mark on his body using the power of Chrono. The spell weakened her, but when it was done, the crest had vanished. Astonished, Manaka swore loyalty to her. He revealed that Prime Minister Godwin had ordered her assassination as revenge for his son, one of the nobles she had struck down. He had also told her that Godwin used slaves and spies to control noble families through threats and bribery. Hearing this, Scarlet's eyes hardened. She decided to confront Godwin herself despite Manaka's warnings to wait for Julius or Leo. When he asked why she always resorted to hitting those who angered her, Scarlet replied calmly that punishing the annoying was simply proper. Manaka laughed and agreed to help her. Together, they set off for the capital, Grana. 3 days later, they arrived in the city slums. Scarlet held up a dull piece of mithril she'd bought from a street peddler. Manaka scoffed, saying it was worthless. Then Julius appeared, saying he had joined them to see the kingdom's corruption with his own eyes, and, half-grinning, admitted he was curious about Scarlet's impulsive nature. Soon, a gang of robbers appeared, surrounding them. Scarlet's expression brightened dangerously. Manaka urged her to stay calm, but when the robbers mocked her, she crushed the mithril to dust with her bare hand. Terrified, the robbers attacked, but Scarlet was faster. She struck with precise, unstoppable force until they fled in terror, muttering that she was some kind of monster. Julius watched with amusement, saying that her unrestrained self was the most entertaining version of her yet. Later, he interrogated a middleman named Junk and claimed he did it without violence. Scarlet doubted that, calling him a con artist. Julius protested, but she only smirked, saying that manipulation without empathy was still manipulation. And with that, the three of them prepared for their next move, infiltrating the secret slave auction where the truth behind the Prime Minister's schemes was waiting. That day, Scarlet and Manaka paid a visit to the nobleman named Zathan. On the surface, they claimed to be looking for a rare kind of slave, but in truth, they were investigating the underground trade. Zathan, being unusually candid, admitted right away that he worked closely with a notorious slave trader named Junk. Together, they specialized in acquiring valuable slaves, rare beings, even mythical ones. As he spoke, his gaze drifted toward Manaka, clearly recognizing him as a beast kin. With an amused smirk, he remarked that it was strange for someone like Scarlet to even have a slave, and the way he looked at Manaka, as if he were nothing more than a collectible item, made Scarlet's blood boil. Still, she forced herself to stay calm, resisting the urge to punch his smug face right then and there. Trying to move the conversation along, Scarlet said she wished to attend the upcoming slave auction. But Zathan quickly explained that such an event required clearance, specifically a background review that usually took half a year. Scarlet offered him a hefty bribe to speed things up, but instead of taking the money, he smiled slyly and made another offer. If Scarlet handed Manaka over to him, he'd let her attend the auction immediately, disguised as his relative. Scarlet's polite smile hid her disgust, but she agreed to his terms for the sake of their mission. Once they left the estate, Scarlet praised Manaka for predicting Zathan's reaction perfectly. But Manaka just blinked in surprise, admitting that what shocked him more was that Scarlet hadn't simply punched the man. Slightly offended but amused, Scarlet ruffled his hair and sighed. As they continued walking, she asked him if he was really fine pretending to be a slave again. She promised she could remove the brand later, but warned that doing so might endanger him. Manaka, however, assured her he didn't mind. He wanted to help, and more than that, he wanted to repay her for freeing him from his first brand, and for forgiving him after he once tried to kill her. Scarlet went quiet, watching him closely. He looked tired, his steps unsteady, his eyes drooping. Then she remembered something. Beastkin were nocturnal. Before she could warn him to rest, Manaka suddenly swayed on his feet, collapsed, and instantly transformed into his cat form. With a sigh, Scarlet caught the little creature in her arms. Cradling him gently, she muttered that he was such a troublesome companion. Then she carried him back to the inn. When she arrived, Julius was already waiting in the lobby with his usual playful grin. He teased her, amazed that she'd managed to close the deal without resorting to violence. Scarlet ignored the jab and carefully laid Manaka on the bed. Julius said he wished he could have gone with them, but as a prince, he couldn't risk being seen associating with the slave trade. Still, he thanked them both for their work, even though Manaka was already fast asleep. Scarlet said she wanted some fresh air, but Julius immediately insisted on coming along, which annoyed her to no end. Finally, she turned and demanded to know why he kept following her. Julius simply smiled and claimed he had business in town. But before she could question him further, a merchant called out to Scarlet, offering a deal on freshly baked apple pie. Before she could even respond, Julius stepped in and bought 2 slices, earning 2 free apples in the process. As they walked through the lively market streets, more vendors called out to Scarlet, but Julius kept stepping in, answering them all and somehow ending up with an armful of random items. Scarlet shot him a suspicious look, finally asking if he really had business in town. That was when Julius grinned and confessed. He'd made that up. He just wanted to tag along. Scarlet clenched her fists, barely holding back her temper. She punched the wall beside him instead of his face, making the prince laugh nervously. But then he held up one of the pie slices right in front of her mouth. The sweet aroma hit her first, and before she knew it, he pressed it close enough that a bit of it touched her lips. Instantly, her mood softened. The sweetness melted across her tongue, and she couldn't stay mad anymore. Julius smiled as her expression relaxed and offered her his own slice. Scarlet accepted and declared that he was officially forgiven. They found a bench by the park and sat down while Scarlet finished her pie. As she wiped her mouth, she asked Julius why he seemed so familiar with the town. Julius casually admitted that he often snuck out of the academy to explore on his own. Scarlet raised an eyebrow, realizing he'd been skipping class. Then he asked what she thought of the famous marketplace. Scarlet admitted that she passed through before, usually just to buy food for Kyle, but had never taken the time to really look around. Now that she had, she found it lively and surprisingly charming. Julius smiled, saying he was glad. He'd always wanted her to try that exact apple pie. Scarlet blinked, realizing he'd planned this little outing from the start. She thought to herself that she might have been kinder if he just admitted he wanted to show her around. Then Julius grew a little nostalgic. He said that when he was younger, life as the first prince was dull. He was always surrounded by self-serving nobles who pushed their daughters on him just to secure power. At one of those banquets, he remembered seeing Scarlet for the first time with her fiancé Kyle, who had been bullying her and tugging her silver hair. After Kyle left, Julius had approached her and told her that if she was afraid of Kyle, she could always tell the king. But Scarlet had just smiled eerily and said she wasn't afraid of Kyle at all. Back in the present, Scarlet listened quietly as Julius finished his story. Then, without warning, he leaned down and placed a light kiss on her cheek. He told her he didn't feel romantic love in the usual way, but that she was dear to him nonetheless. In his heart, she was the most important person in the world. Later that evening, back at the inn, Scarlet lay on her bed, wondering whether that kiss was meant to tease her or not. The next day, Scarlet and Manaka returned to Zathan's estate to fulfill their end of the deal. But before granting her auction access, Zathan insisted on verifying Manaka's identity. He explained that some nobles disguise ordinary slaves as beast kin to raise their value. Reluctantly, Manaka transformed into his cat form. Zathan's eyes gleamed with greed the moment he saw him, already calculating how much profit the little beast kin could fetch at auction. Then the door opened and a towering man named Donovan entered, asking if Scarlet was the slave they'd be taking. Zathan quickly corrected him, explaining she was actually the client. Scarlet, however, noticed something odd about Donovan. His stance, his aura, he wasn't entirely human, likely a magic beast in disguise. When Donovan noticed Manaka, he immediately tried to collar him and drag him forward. But Manaka hissed and resisted, refusing to move. Annoyed, Donovan raised his whip. Before he could strike, Scarlet caught the other end, stopping him cold. Her voice was icy as she commented that Zathan's slave clearly lacked discipline, and that perhaps she should teach him some manners. The remark enraged Donovan, who tried to pull the whip back, but it wouldn't budge. Zathan, thinking it was some joke, warned Scarlet not to provoke him. Donovan was once an A-class adventurer, someone even a knight captain would struggle against, but Scarlet didn't care. Donovan, red with anger, tried to strike again, but Scarlet's grip held firm. She calmly asked if Donovan himself was also up for auction. Zathan nervously explained that Donovan was actually his personal slave and bodyguard. Hearing that, Scarlet's lips curled into a sharp smile as she remarked that, in that case, he didn't need to stay pristine. In one swift move, she yanked the whip, pulling the huge man off his feet. A single powerful punch sent him crashing straight out the window. Afterward, Scarlet knelt beside Manaka and noticed the bruises on his neck from the collar. Muttering softly, she cast a healing spell. The marks vanished and she hugged him tightly, whispering that she'd come back for him soon. Zathan, pale and trembling, insisted she didn't need to pay for the damages. He even thanked her for disciplining his slave and quickly discussed the meeting place for the auction, clearly terrified of her temper. When Scarlet returned to the inn, she spotted a familiar carriage waiting outside. Her brother Leo stepped out, angry and ready to scold her for disappearing. And when she looked closer, she saw Julius inside the carriage, confirming her suspicion that he had told Leo where she'd gone. Back at the estate, Leo scolded them both harshly, especially Julius for taking such risks as a prince. Julius reported that they discovered the auction's location, but Leo only grew more stressed, worried about Scarlet's reckless behavior and her growing reputation for punching nobles. Trying to calm him, Scarlet asked about his own findings. Leo revealed that the man behind the auction was named Godwin. Scarlet added that it was scheduled to take place in 2 nights, causing Leo to panic. As he muttered plans for infiltration, Julius joked about not having any apple pie for Scarlet today, which earned him a glare. Then they discussed their strategy. Leo urged Scarlet to return to the estate for safety, but she refused. She said that ever since breaking her engagement with Kyle, she'd finally felt free to see the world for herself. She'd witnessed how broken the kingdom truly was, its slavery, its poverty, its corruption. And among the people she had met, she had even found a golden-haired prince whose only goal seemed to be annoying and teasing her. Julius, realizing she was talking about him, laughed. Scarlet stood and declared that what angered her most was how easily wicked nobles prospered, people like Godwin. She swore that greedy nobles were the most satisfying things to punch. Julius burst out laughing, while Leo sighed in defeat as his sister once again declared that she was happiest when she got to punch evil nobles. But their laughter faded when Leo revealed one last detail. Godwin had ties to the vanquished empire. That meant real danger. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, Godwin met with soldiers from the Red Sky Dragons, the Empire's elite aerial unit, secretly arranging Scarlet's assassination. When they departed, Terraneza suggested using a new weapon, a gun, to deal with her instead. Curious, Godwin bragged that his magical pendant was powerful enough, but his confidence faltered the moment the weapon was fired, its destructive force far beyond anything he'd ever seen. That night, the long-awaited auction finally takes place, and Scarlet arrives dressed to perfection as she steps out of the carriage with Zathan at her side. He hands her an ornate mask, and she puts it on while saying she hopes they'll make worthwhile purchases, although in truth, her real goal is to shut this entire operation down. Thanks to Julius' behind-the-scenes maneuvering, Scarlet was granted permission to attend. He managed to convince Leo that letting her join the mission would actually improve their chances. After all, without Scarlet, they could only deploy 10 undercover agents, all unarmed and none of them strong enough to overpower Godwin. Julius even reasoned that if Scarlet succeeded, all the rumors and scandals staining her reputation might finally be replaced, allowing her to become the kingdom's iron-fisted savior. Meanwhile, outside the venue, Leo is informed that his knights are in position, though they will only move once Julius gives the signal. He watches the grand building anxiously, remembering the promise he forced Scarlet to make, that she wouldn't hit anyone unnecessarily. Her cheerful smile in return didn't help his nerves. He knows better than anyone how much his sister loves fighting. Inside the auction hall, Scarlet moves through glittering crowds and listens to nobles brag about what kinds of servants they plan to buy. Each guest seems to be searching for their own twisted prize. But suddenly, the lights die out, plunging the entire room into a confused hush. Someone bumps into Scarlet in the dark, a man whose voice sounds oddly familiar, but he slips away before she can identify him. When the lights flare back on, a showman dressed like a stage magician appears on the platform, announcing the start of the auction. As the orchestra plays, the first slave is brought forward, a one-winged Avon girl. The nobles immediately erupt into shouting bids, the price climbing rapidly. But soon Julius appears quietly at Scarlet's side. He tells her he's only checking on her, because all the palace knights are standing by and will storm the venue as soon as he gives the order. Scarlet proposes a bold idea. She wants permission to personally beat Godwin once they find him. Julius admits he enjoys watching Scarlet beat up terrible people, so he agrees to hold off on the raid a little longer. However, before fully giving her his blessing, he demands something in return. Scarlet promises her undying loyalty to the kingdom, but that isn't what Julius wants. He wants her loyalty directed toward him specifically. Even if he becomes king soon, he wants her pledge now. With no other real choice, Scarlet reluctantly agrees, thinking yet again that Julius is one dangerously calculating prince. Afterward, Scarlet tells Julius that Godwin is watching the auction from the second floor. Julius says it's the perfect moment for Scarlet to demonstrate her true capability, so they start making their move. Meanwhile, backstage, unrest brews among the slaves waiting for their turn. A young elf desperately tries to stay beside her mother even as guards drag the older woman toward the stage. The other slaves look broken, some quietly pleading for a miracle. The child collapses, crying, but Manaka gently comforts her, promising that she and her mother will be safe. Back in the hall, Scarlet starts clearing a path toward Godwin's location. She knocks out nearby soldiers with swift, controlled magic. Julius praises her refined technique, but Scarlet fires back a teasing remark reminding him that he used to crush her scores during their Academy magic exams. But just as they reach the room where Godwin is hiding, a group of brutish guards blocks their path. Scarlet calmly removes her elegant gloves and replaces them with her battle ones. Meanwhile, on the main stage, the announcer announces an intermission while the orchestra begins a dramatic piece called The Dance of the Roses. Perfectly in sync with the music's rhythm, Scarlet dives into the fight. Every strike she delivers lands like part of a choreographed performance. In fact, to anyone who might overhear, it almost sounds graceful. She moves like she's dancing, spinning, striking, and sending opponents flying. Eventually, one of the men is thrown straight through a door, crashing into the room and startling everyone inside. Scarlet walks calmly in, joking that she's finally happy to see her favorite punching bag in person. Everyone stares in shock. Hein's face twists with fury. Desperate not to be humiliated again, he instantly summons thunder magic. Yet Julius casually lifts his hand and casts a dispel order using the ring on his finger. Godwin's eyes widen. He recognizes that ring immediately. Only the royal family possesses it. The nobles in the room try to convince themselves that Julius must be an imposter, but panic spreads quickly. Knowing he is cornered, Godwin frantically calls for Donovan, who now looks even more monstrous than before. But before Donovan can act, Sigurd bursts onto the scene, taking Donovan down in one swift movement before stepping protectively in front of Julius. Scarlet recognizes him as the man she bumped into earlier. Godwin screams for his men to attack. Sigurd prepares to defend Julius, but Scarlet pulls him back, whispering that these thugs are her punching bags. She only lets Sigurd fight Donovan, keeping the corrupt nobles for herself. Sigurd agrees enthusiastically, and both launch into battle. A few minutes later, Leo finally rushes inside, distressed that Julius never sent the signal. His worry turns to heartbreak when he sees Scarlet standing in the middle of a bloody pile of beaten nobles. Scarlet insists she held back, but Leo argues that he knows full well she didn't. Before he can scold her further, he notices nobles in the audience fleeing in panic. Scarlet suddenly realizes she hasn't even punched Godwin yet. Julius orders Leo to chase Godwin down, much to Scarlet's dismay, but he promises she'll still get her chance. Leo hesitates until Julius reminds him they exchanged vows earlier. Scarlet confirms it without understanding what it implies, and Leo immediately breaks down into joyful tears because he mistakenly assumes they exchanged wedding vows. Scarlet is baffled but glad to see her brother looking happy for once. Julius simply watches the siblings, amused by how clueless they both are. Then Julius pulls out a strange bottle and breaks the seal, unleashing a spell. Leo snaps out of his emotional moment and focuses on the mission. Activating his own magic, he senses Godwin and Hein fleeing upward toward the rooftop. But Leo's expression quickly turns grim. There's a dragon waiting above. The three rush toward the central stairway. Leo doubts they can reach the rooftop in time, but Scarlet simply removes her heels. Before anyone can question her, she uses an acceleration spell, sprinting up the stairs so fast she vanishes from sight. Meanwhile, Scarlet finally bursts on the rooftop, though the spell's toll hits her body hard. Ahead, she sees Godwin and Hein running toward a massive red dragon and its rider, Alflame. They shout angrily at him for not meeting them earlier, but Alflame mutters something under his breath and orders his dragon, Rex, to teach them a lesson. Rex swings his massive tail, yet Scarlet stops it with a single punch. As the dust settles, Hein lies unconscious under her feet, knocked out from her landing. Ignoring him, Scarlet greets Godwin politely. Alflame descends from his dragon, impressed by her strength, and immediately proposes to her. Scarlet flatly rejects him by slapping him so hard he flies into the railing. Rex roars in outrage, but Scarlet grabs the dragon's jaw and slams him to the ground. Alflame, stubborn and deliriously smitten, gets back up and keeps complimenting her. Scarlet kicks him away again. Eventually, she reveals she knows his true identity, the prince of the vanquished empire. He admits it proudly. He even confesses that he only came here to kill Godwin. Horrified, Godwin screams at the betrayal, realizing Vanquish would never accept him as a minister. Alflame agrees, saying he'd never trust a man who betrays his own kingdom. He hurls his spear at Godwin, but Scarlet blocks it with her leg. Alflame teases her for showing her legs, using the moment to get closer again. Scarlet warns him not to touch her without permission, but he only finds her more charming. She notices his unusual toughness, and he explains that the god of steel blessed him with near-indestructible endurance. He confidently claims Scarlet cannot defeat him with raw power. Scarlet simply smirks and says she knows exactly how to beat him. She wraps her arms around his neck as if going in for a kiss, then knees him repeatedly in the face at lightning speed. Even Godwin is speechless. Finally, Scarlet grabs Alflame by the collar, activates her ability, and launches him into the sky, sending him flying back toward his homeland. Then she turns to Godwin. He collapses to his knees, trembling. In desperation, he blames Haim for everything and begs for mercy. In his panic, he confesses something far more personal. He was the one who sabotaged her relationship with Kyle. He used Taranza to help orchestrate it. Scarlet's expression turns cold at that name. Godwin scrambles to save his life by revealing more. Taranza isn't who she appears to be. She's actually someone from another world, reincarnated into this one, through the power of a goddess. That marks the end of today's Anime Recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach a current goal of 10K subscribers.